you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than men. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. We are marching for a certainty. And it's not only the certainty that we will arrive at the day of victory for the unborn, it is a certainty that the power which now dismembers them and crushes them and throws them in the garbage is a power which at its root has already been defeated.
Well, I'll tell you, Father Frank, it's amazing that we're actually sharing the stage with you. When Jason and I were kids, we met you in 1988.
Yes.
You look the exact same. He's got the same hair, the same glasses, and the same outfit. In 1991, that was the height of abortion. It was 2,197 freestanding abortion clinics in America. Today, thanks to the work of Priests for Life and other organizations and Christians and Catholics joining hands and uniting for life, there are less than 600 freestanding abortion clinics in America.
Well, good evening, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Great to be with you live on this Sunday night. It is the 2nd of August, and it's so great to see so many of you with us and to see your various comments. And tonight's the night where you set the agenda, ask me the questions that you have, raise the topics that you'd like me to hear me comment on, and I'll ask you for your perspectives on these things as well. And John is greeting us from the Philippines. It's Monday morning there already, and great to have you with us as well. Let's begin with a little prayer from Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day. 1 Corinthians 15. Then will the words that are written be fulfilled. Death is swallowed up in victory. Reflection. At the scene of the first murder of Abel by Cain, the soil opened its mouth to swallow Abel's blood. We read that in Genesis 4:10-11. At the scene of the final victory of life, it is death itself that will be swallowed up in victory. God is in the business of destroying death, and that is why we, his people, work on behalf of life. Let us pray. Lord, continue to give us consolation amidst a culture of death, that this evil will not last forever, but will be swallowed up in victory. Amen. I hope you have your copy of this book. You can get it at prolifereflectionsforeveryday.com. All right, many of you are saying in your comments, Trump 2020, that is so essential if we're going to do what this reflection and prayer invited us to do. You know, it's not about personalities in this election, and that's what we have to keep reminding people. It's not about personalities. It's about whether or not we're going to end the culture of death, whether or not we're going to stop the killing of the most innocent babies. It's a Holocaust, 62 million babies since Roe v. Wade, and President Trump puts our nation, puts our courts, puts our laws on the path of restoring protection to those children. Nothing is overnight. Nobody has a magic wand, but it is leading the courts and the Congress and the administration in the right direction. He has done everything right when it comes to pro-life, and it comes to a lot of other things too. We in this movement think about, the long term direction, the direction of our policies, the direction of our court decisions. And so Trump 2020 means millions of lives, 2021, 2025, 2030. And all red, as Tracy is saying, and this is important. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot in these coming 3 months. It's 3 months from tomorrow is Election Day. That it's all red. It's because it's the whole Republican platform that is pro-life. When we see, for example, in the state of New York, where I grew up, back at the beginning of 2019, when they passed that incredibly outrageous law eliminating all limits on abortion. None of the Republicans voted for that. So when we say all red, we're talking about when you look at what's happening on the state level, when you look at these extreme abortion laws. It's not the Republicans are opposing those consistently. In fact, the Democrats in New York State wanted to pass that extreme law, taking away all restrictions on abortion. They wanted to pass it for years and years and years. What held them back? What held them back was Republicans in the legislature who had the majority in I think it was they had the majority in the Senate, but the Assembly was pushing for the bill. The Republicans had the majority in one of the legislative chambers, and so it didn't go through. And we see this all up and down the government. So what we're saying is, for the sake of ending this Holocaust, and for the sake of a lot of other things too, we vote Republican. It's not because that's the platform that is perfect or embodies. We're not saying there's any platform that perfectly embodies the gospel, but that's a red herring. That's a false argument. When people come to us and say, "Oh, but no, nobody's perfect, no party is perfect," who's saying they are? We're talking very practically here. It's like, what's the next step to get us to sanity and to get us to a culture of life? So let me answer some of these questions here. Let's go down to what John says. Keep all those questions there. Go, John. Father, do you have an ebook version of Pro-Life Reflections? Actually, yes. If you go to, let me make sure I get this right, prolifereflections.com, you'll see the reflection for every day there on the website. prolifereflectionsforeveryday.com is where you can actually order the book, but prolifereflections.com will get you to the reflections themselves each day. So that is not exactly an ebook of the book, but it is the daily reflections in the electronic format and on that webpage. So that's something that you could look up. Okay, so there's a long comment there. We can grab that. That was John's question. Patricia, can you speak to the ramifications if Democrats take over the administration? And I think, Patricia, this, if it was you, if I'm remembering from the other day, phrase the question like this way, what would we do if the president didn't get reelected? Well, we, first of all, I want to express to you my confidence that he will be reelected and that we will continue to move in a pro-life direction. I just think that the American people are seeing before their eyes the absolute absurdity, outrageous behavior of the Democrat Party. It's become more extreme than ever. And I think a lot of people who see it don't say anything about it, but when they're in the confidentiality and privacy of that voting booth, they'll do the right thing. I just believe that, and I think we see evidence of it. And you know what else is very encouraging is the enthusiasm gap between our side and the other side. But nevertheless, to answer the question, which is an important question, the ramifications of the Democrats taking over the administration is going to be that not only the bloodshed continues, but it increases, because they will make, I'm convinced that the Democrats want to make Planned Parenthood an agency of the federal government. They'll get beyond all the funding disputes and just the funding for this largest abortion business in the world will just be automatically part of the fabric of being a part of the federal government. Short of that, they will certainly assure the funding gets increased. And remember, President Trump has blocked not only millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, but billions of dollars from the abortion industry around the country and around the world. Billions of dollars. And that has an effect. Planned Parenthood had to drop out of the Title X program. Remember, there are multiple streams of funding. Some of them are under the control of the president. Others are only under the control of Congress. And some of it is international. Some of it is federal. Some of it is state level. It's complicated. But the president has done so much to stop and to reduce that funding. It will open up the floodgates were the Democrats to be in power. They would also pass laws. They've already introduced the bills. In fact, they've introduced the bills in multiple Congresses. They've never quite had the support to get them passed. And this is where divided government has prevented that, just like it prevented the New York Democrats from getting their extreme law into effect until January of 2019, when the Democrats had full control in the New York government. But the point I'm making is that they would pass this bill that would, and this would happen if you had the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives all under Democrat control. They would pass a bill to take away all the restrictions on abortion. As you know, right now, it's not that abortion is illegal, but there are a lot of common sense restrictions and regulations in place. Most states, for example, have parental involvement laws. So if you have a minor age daughter who wants to get an abortion, in most states, either one or both parents have to at least be informed, if not actually consent, before the procedure occurs. Things like that. Clinic regulations, safety laws in the abortion facilities, informed consent, giving that young mother 24 hours or 48 hours to at least consider some new information before she gets that life-changing procedure and life-ending procedure, and on it goes. Listen, it's no guess. It's a certainty. They would wipe out all these common sense restrictions. They would fill the courts, furthermore, with judges that would uphold the most extreme pro-abortion laws. They would get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. If the Democrats get control of the Senate again, they would take away the filibuster, which would give, see, the filibuster in the Senate it's an annoyance for both sides, and it's a help for both sides. It's the provision that requires you essentially to get anything done legislatively in the Senate. If there's objection from the minority party, it requires you to have 60 votes. So either you've got to do a really amazing thing in the elections and get to 60 votes, which is not, it's not that it's impossible, it's just it's very difficult in a divided country. But then you have to, as an alternative, persuade enough members of the majority party to get what you would to stop something that the majority party wants to do. Again, that's hard to do, but that's the hill you would have to climb. So, in other words, the filibuster in the Senate makes it very, very hard to get a piece of legislation passed when there is strong opposition from the minority party. So that would help the pro-life cause in the case of a Democrat majority when they wanted to pass such an extreme bill. The Republicans would filibuster it. But at the same time, it's the reason why we haven't been able to defund Planned Parenthood or pass a lot of other good pro-life legislation, even when we had under Republican control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I mean, that's not magic either. That doesn't mean you get what you need to get, again, because of the filibuster. So these are some of the things that would happen. But the courts, the kind of judges they would put in, who, again, would be in there for a generation. So very, very bad stuff. And, the pro-life movement, what would the pro-life movement do? We would continue doing what we always do, presenting the truth to the public to get them seeing what's going on here and to get them changed, get them converted, get them pressuring their lawmakers, even if they be Democrat. Okay, Nancy is asking, Father, many Catholics believe it's okay to support the Democratic Party. I was one of them, and I feel so much guilt now. Well, Nancy, thank you for your courage in changing. The Lord is more than forgiving. I mean, if you feel guilt because now you realize the damage that they have done and will do, that's normal, that's natural, that's good actually. I mean, if we didn't feel the guilt, then we wouldn't be we wouldn't know that we've really moved forward in embracing a more true vision of things. But don't let that guilt hold you down. That's something you may want to share with others as you're sharing with all of us. Let them know, hey, I was once like you are, supporting this party, but let me explain to you why I changed, why I feel guilty now. And that guilt may indeed help someone else to make the same kind of change that you have expressed. And as far as someone actually being Catholic, I mean, why at this point? And again, this is because of the positions they take. Sometimes people will complain to us that, oh, well, why are you opposing the Democrats? Well, look at what they stand for. Why would not just a Catholic, but any decent human being want to support a party that supports a Holocaust, the killing of all these children? They support it. They want us to pay for it. They want to expand it. They want to solidify it. They talk about codifying Roe v. Wade. That's what Joe Biden is saying, codifying Roe v. Wade. Codifying Roe v. Wade. It's a court decision. They want to make it into a law. To do what? abort babies even in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month of pregnancy. That's what Roe v. Wade says. How can people, you support something like that? And this is a party that wants to restrict the freedom of the church, the freedom of believers to live out their faith in public life. So this is the sad irony and the blatant contradiction of a believer, Catholic or other kind of believer, to support a party that would want to take away their right to live out the things they claim to believe in. And some people might say, well, what are you talking about? Well, it's like I've talked about so many times before. Under Obama and Biden, they imposed a mandate on religious organizations like ours and like the Little Sisters of the Poor to provide abortion in our health insurance plans for our employees. Our faith doesn't allow us to do that, and we told them that, and they wanted to impose it anyway. There's no respect here for the conscience, the moral conscience of believers in America, and that was fought over the course of years in multiple Supreme Court cases and multiple cases in the other federal courts, and we won a lot of victories in that. And then President Trump was elected, and he changed the mandate to allow us to live out our faith. Biden and the Democrats have said they want to put it back again. How can a Catholic support that? You don't want your own church to have the freedom to live out our faith? You don't. I mean, how can a Catholic? This is so basic. And friends, I think the part of the problem here is they just don't know. Now, a lot of people know and they don't care, and they're against the church. Okay, but put them aside for a moment. There are a lot of people you can reach. And that's to put Mary's question on there. There's a lot of people you can reach. They just don't know this. And if you could explain it to them or share these videos with them, you can make a difference. And that's what we have to do between now and the next 3 months, is really reach as many of these voters as we possibly can. Mary is asking, how are Biden and Pelosi not excommunicated? It's a failure of leadership. I mean, the excommunication decision is up to the local bishop. And from what I can see over all these years, the bishops as a body can't seem to come to a consensus about how to deal with this. You've got some among them who are very strong and they speak out, and sometimes they even warn them directly. And we might see some bishops over these next 3 months as Biden, tries to gather in Catholic votes, tries to claim that he is a Catholic. And there may be some who will speak out warning him. I don't think we're going to see any excommunications because they actually doubt the efficacy of that. I mean, I've talked with bishops about this, and they actually doubt the effectiveness of it. Now, some of us, it's like, to a lot of us, it's like, hey, common sense, you run an organization, you've got someone trying to claim the benefits of the organization for his or her own political life, and meanwhile throwing the teaching out the window. So don't you draw a boundary line? Don't you say, hey, you no longer believe what our group believes, so you're no longer part of the group? For a lot of people, that's common sense. For the bishops, it's like, well, that might just make them a martyr and make others support them all the more. This is what a lot of them are saying. Or some of them who might want to do this are afraid they're going to stick out like a sore thumb, because then another bishop, their brother bishop, as they say, has a pro-abortion politician in their own diocese, and they don't take that action, and then they're afraid they make each other look bad. And look, the bottom line is the bishops have said some very clear things about all this. And I want to refer you to a document they wrote. The best thing we can do, because we don't have the power to excommunicate them, right? It's not under our authority. But the best thing we can do is, in regard to the church and the bishops and so forth, is to communicate loud and clear what they've already said. Gospeloflife.net. Remember that website, gospeloflife.net, leads you to a page we've set up about their document called Living the Gospel of Life. And Living the Gospel of Life was issued in 1998, still just as valid today. Very clear, forceful, logical statement, not too long, from the United States bishop. It was passed by the whole body of bishops, saying to these Catholic politicians, you can't do what you're doing. You can't present yourself as a Catholic and throw the teaching about pro-life out the window. That's exactly what Biden and Pelosi do. So short of excommunicating them under the law, which only a bishop can do, what we can do is quote unquote excommunicate them, right? I'm using that in using that as a figure of speech. Excommunicate them conceptually, show where the boundary line is between what they are saying and what the faith says. So gospeloflife.net, you'll find that to be a very helpful document. And then you've got Teresa asking, well, can't the Pope intervene? He can, legally speaking. He has the authority. The Pope has full jurisdiction over the entire church. So could he intervene and say, he could step in and say, you are excommunicated, just like that. Or he can step in and say to the bishops, you need to start excommunicating these people. Absolutely, just like that. But the style of leadership these days militates against that. In other words, they don't want to do that. Pope doesn't want to do that. The Vatican doesn't want to do that. They have very, very, very strong deference to the local bishop. Just to understand, this is the style of leadership. That there's what they can do technically under the law is one thing. What jurisdictional power they have is one thing. But the willingness to use it is something very different, and that's what ends up making the difference. They're not willing to use it because they're saying, well, they're the local bishops, and they're the ones that have to work this out. Our bishops have not been able to work it out. They have not been able to come to any kind of a clear resolution of this. There's developed a practical consensus, and the practical consensus is that they don't impose any of these disciplines. As they say, we have on our website, by the way, at priestsforlife.org or endabortion.us. Endabortion.us is the domain that leads to our Priests for Life website. We do have statements, dozens and dozens of statements from individual bishops made over the years. Just look up church teaching or statements of bishops on abortion. Many, many statements of many, many bishops over the years. And let's get Dale's question and John's question on the screen. We'll get to you guys in just a second. And Brandy's question about men. And there was another question there about supporting Trump and the killing not ending at birth. Let's do that one too. A lot of good questions, friends. Thank you. We'll get to them. We'll get to them here. But like I was saying, and these are helpful statements. Dozens and dozens of bishops who have said things, and a lot of them have said them prior to previous elections. So they're good statements that could be used. So just go to endabortion.us, our main website. Look up bishops' statements on abortion. You'll see a lot of them that have been made. Now, Dale is pointing out, what about automatic excommunication in Biden's case? And many have made the case that, the canon law of the church talks about an abortion that actually happens Okay, so the person responsible for making it actually happen is excommunicated automatically. So applying it to a politician like Biden, the argument can certainly be made that, hey, without his action or lack of action, all these abortions would not have taken place. But that's where, they don't, the bishops don't declare that. See, in other words, the option they have in those cases is to declare it, is to say, hey guys, you're automatically excommunicated because you made all these abortions happen. The problem is they're advised by their theologians and canon lawyers that the causality isn't direct enough. I mean, if you were standing there, in the operating room doing the abortion, it would be hard to deny the causality. And it is hard to deny it logically. I mean, you pass a law or you block a law, and it has consequences, right? You can't deny that there's a causation, but they'll get into these legal technicalities, and that's what happens. It's like what Colin is saying here. Can one excommunicate themselves on a spiritual level? Absolutely, even on a legal way. You can excommunicate yourself. There's a number of things in canon law that result in automatic excommunication. What we have to point out, and that's why I go back again to that document, gospeloflife.net, is that the kind of, as Colin is saying, spiritual disconnect, that the bishops have been very clear about, and that's why Living the Gospel of Life is such a helpful document. That's why they've been very clear about that. There is a spiritual disconnect, and you are putting yourself at odds with a teaching of the church that is not a maybe, and that does not admit of gradations. It's absolute, and it's unchangeable. No abortion is permitted. We must protect the unborn. That teaching of the church could not be clearer and is unchangeable. And so the position of Biden, Pelosi, and these other pro-abort Catholics couldn't be clearer either. So, I mean, the disconnect is so crystal clear. What we can do, we who are not bishops, keep talking about it. Keep talking about it. Keep showing the disconnect. And the bishop may want to challenge these politicians publicly, but you can. And that's where the media that we're using right now, this social media, is such a great benefit. We can challenge them publicly. Okay, so let's go on to After Dale. Got your questions here on the screen. John, thank you for that good question. Where can I point someone who still doesn't believe Trump is pro-life? Well, you might want to send them to prolifepresident.com. That's a website I put together. Prolifepresident.com gives an overview of the key pro-life accomplishments of the president. Again, pro-life, speaking here about protection of the unborn and working against abortion. And actions speak louder than words, right? I mean, if the person is asking, the people ask this question in a number of different ways, right? When they say, "Oh, I'm not so sure President Trump is pro-life." Let me give you a couple of perspectives on this. First of all, some ask the question in terms of, well, what has he really done to help our movement? Well, abortion is still legal. Well, it's not as simple as that. Of course, it's still legal. You have to overturn court decisions and you have to pass laws. And we have three different branches of government. They each have their own responsibilities, and they all need to work together in order to get things done. So nobody should expect the president, again, to wave a magic wand or give an order, give a command, and all of a sudden abortion stops. So part of this is people have to understand how our system of government works, okay? And so that's what has to be explained to certain people. It's not all in one step. But the president is certainly doing everything, has done everything under the presidential authority to make this work. And he's called on, you notice what he does a lot, he calls on Congress to act. Because again, he understands the Constitution. The Constitution puts the lawmaking power in the Congress. And so what a president needs to do in that case is say to the Congress, I'm asking you to bring to my desk this bill that would protect these babies, and I'll sign it. In other words, on a lot of things that the president, the executive branch, will signal to the legislative branch, I will sign this law. Teresa, I'm going to tie your question into my answer to John's question. So let's put that question up on the board here. I have a separate board, my friends, where I'm seeing their questions so I can take them in order. So the president will signal to the Congress, hey, I want to sign this law, send it to me. Now, the other way works too. A lot of times, and the president has done this with abortion, again, prolifepresident.com, you'll see a summary of all these things, both in a video format and also in written form. Sometimes the president will signal to the Congress, hey, don't send me this law because I'll veto it. And what he has said is that any law that comes to his desk, any bill that comes to his desk, it's not a law unless he signs it into law, that has weakening. We talked before about all the funding streams of money that go into the abortion industry, and the president said if you, because he knows that the House Democrats have been trying to do this, he said if you send a bill to my desk that has any weakening of what we call the pro-life protections. The pro-life protections are protections in these bills that keep our tax money from going to Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, from, again, these multiple funding streams. The president said, I'll veto it. I will not let that go through. Now, of course, he's also had the protection of the pro-life Senate, the Republican Senate. So they're not going to pass. So in other words, it has to get over two hurdles that it's not going to get over. If the Democrats try to weaken the pro-life provisions, it's not going to pass the hurdle of the pro-life Senate. And even if it did, for some reason, when it got to the president, he would veto it. So when he sends that signal to the lawmaking branch, the Congress, well then what happens there is that they don't take the time and the trouble to create a bill that he's going to end up vetoing. Okay, so it's a discouragement for them to even try, because passing a bill, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes money, and if they know if he signals to them in advance that he's going to veto it, well then that sometimes stops them in their tracks. And he's done so many other things that it's incredible. And prolifepresident.com will get you there. Now, some people are asking the question not in terms of has he done for pro-life, but is he really pro-life in his mind and heart? And this gets to Teresa's question. People will say, well, he just says he's pro-life just to get votes. Always challenged about that. Teresa, here's what you say. He actually signed legislation. He actually put judges on the courts who are pro-life. He signed legislation, for example, that returned to the states the right to divert money away from the abortion industry. And so what more could a person do who actually is pro-life in his heart? In other words, in a sense, what we're asking them is, what difference does it make? In other words, you can't. I have absolutely no doubt that this man is pro-life in his heart. I mean, one of the ways you know that is that he got the votes, he got in, but then he actually followed through. Now people might say, oh well, but he's doing it in order to get the votes for the next time. Well, if you have any evidence that he's actually not sincere about this, present the evidence. But even in the situation where one is pretty convinced that a person is not sincere, the fact of the matter is, if you say that you're pro-life and then you get these votes, but he's actually doing the things that go with it. And you think that he's going to go against, he's not going to sign a pro-abortion bill. He got a Republican Congress and a whole Republican Party behind him. He's actually been doing the things. And if you're actually putting your signature on a paper that appoints a judge on a court who's pro-life, or signs a law that's pro-life, or ends funding to Planned Parenthood through Title X, which is pro-life, the signature doesn't have any less weight or authority or effect if somewhere in the person's heart he's not really pro-life. So in a sense, it's a moot point We know that he actually is sincere because, a lot of these things he does out of his own initiative. Somebody mentioned going to the March for Life. He didn't have to do that. How did he have to do that? Why did he do that? He's actually going to the March for Life. And it's just political. Well, look at the fruits. It's accomplishing what the movement is meant to accomplish. And there's zero evidence. There's zero evidence that this is a charade or that this is a game. He's actually making it happen. Okay, so thank you, Teresa, for that. And these are some of the things that I want to ask you to say to these people. Okay, so we dealt with that question from Dale. Let's take that off and go to the next one. Now, Brandy, I don't know if I'm understanding your point here. Don't think men who create the laws have say. It sounds like what some people say, that men shouldn't have a say in matters relating to abortion. And my question is, why not? Men are involved in abortion every day. First of all, you need a man in order to, conceive a child. A child is conceived inside the woman's body, but you need a man involved. It's his child too. And secondly, how would one be a man and fail to protect a baby? Aren't men supposed to be protectors? Isn't this a matter of human rights, human lives? The whole idea of framing this just as a woman's issue, just as something that concerns women, is a flawed position right from the start. Well, how can men be involved in this? Involved in what? Stopping violence against little children? Should men be involved in trying to stop child abuse? Why shouldn't men be involved in trying to stop child killing? So, and if men are not going to be involved in it, well then, Roe v. Wade should never have been decided because it was decided by 7 men. So, there's a lot of, and Biden's a man too. If those on the other side of this debate are going to say men should have no say in abortion, then Biden should keep his mouth shut when it comes to abortion. But oh no, he's going to be right there making sure there's more abortion. So let's just be consistent about this. But hey, listen, it's not just a woman's issue. It's a human rights issue. And a man who doesn't stand up for human rights is not being much of a man. What part of Almighty God's command, thou shalt not kill, don't they understand? That's right, Brenda. It's pretty straightforward. In fact, if you study the Hebrew, of course, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and thou shalt not kill is a word that means murder. So it's talking about the killing of the innocent, particularly very focused directly and specifically on the type of killing that abortion is. It's the killing of the innocent. And let's see. Okay, so Teresa is saying that she says much of what I explained in responding to people who say, oh, I'm not so sure the president is pro-life, and still not get so good a response. Well, they may not give you a good response, but it does give them something to think about, and especially if you give them a resource. If a person really honestly is trying to get an answer to a question instead of just trying to convince us of their viewpoint or just venting, but if they really honestly are wrestling with a question, then when you give them something to read through, like prolifepresident.com, you've made progress. And if they go back and read it, they will make much more progress in their own mind than they might admit to you right away. But like you say, just hope he puts a complete end to abortion once and for all. I want to tell you something. That can happen. And this election is going to be a big factor in how fast that happens. How could we put an end to abortion once and for all? I'll tell you the dream scenario. And we could all really work hard to make this happen. We re-elect the president, then he's going to have 4 more years to fill the courts with solid pro-life judges. And in the next 4 years, it's very conceivable that the 2 oldest members of the court, who are both on the liberal left-wing pro-abortion wing of the court, Ginsburg and Breyer, would have to step down. I mean, they're both in their, Ginsburg is in her high 80s and Breyer in the low 80s. They're not going to be able to stay on the court forever. It's conceivable in the next presidential term that both of them would be replaced. President Trump is in there. We get 2 solid pro-life justices on that Supreme Court. we could have a 7-2 pro-life majority. 7-2. The dream scenario is the president getting in there, getting 60 pro-life votes in the Senate, because then you don't have to worry about the filibuster, and get the House back under pro-life control. Then you can pass pro-life legislation as strong as you want, and it'll be passed, and the president will sign it. The complete defunding of Planned Parenthood, big step towards ending abortion altogether. And again, strong pro-life judges on the courts. Now, the margin of majority that the pro-life Republicans have in the U.S. Senate, the margin of, not just having the majority, but the margin of that majority makes a difference in how strong the judges are. That was a benefit from the 2018 midterm elections. The House went back under Democrat control, but we gained in the Senate. And that's unusual, by the way, in the midterm election of a first-time president who shifted the White House. What did that do? That enabled the president to appoint even stronger judges. You know why? Because what happens is we've got a couple of those Republican senators who, where I'm talking about Collins and Murkowski, who, will sometimes vote in a pro-abortion way. And so are they going to support a judge that seems too pro-life, too strong, too conservative? Susan Collins, to her great credit, supported and voted for Justice Kavanaugh. Murkowski didn't. But when we got those additional 2 senators in 2018, what that did was it gave us the cushion so that if it's a stronger judge that some might be nervous about, they're too strong, we don't have to worry if 1 or 2 of the Republicans are peeled off and they don't vote for that judge. So you see what I'm saying? So look, this election can take us a big step forward in bringing an end to abortion altogether. Big step forward. Now, Christine, thank you for your question. Father, can you please do more radio interviews? Larry O'Connor, Breitbart, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson. Yes, I've got my media team in contact with all those folks. And I've been getting more radio. I guess you get a lot of radio interviews, but you're talking about, of course, very high profile. And I've been on Tucker. I've been on with Tucker. I've been on with Sean and Breitbart. We have a good relationship with. So it's something that groups like ours and my media team, we have to constantly work on it. We have to constantly be giving them good proposals and content. And I assure you, we're working on that behind the scenes and making that happen. So hopefully you'll see a lot more of that very soon. Oh, Carmen, let's see what Carmen is saying. The Pope speaking out on terrorist thugs going out and destroying our Catholic statues. I'm not hearing anything from him coming out against Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Yeah, it's a need. We need leadership from the top, and we need leadership from everywhere in between. And I hope that we see it too. I don't know I don't know what's going on with that. But yes, we need to hear very strong leadership in all those things. Again, like I was saying before, there is a tendency in church leadership these days to rely so much on the local authority that is, they show deference. That's the job of the United States bishops to speak about. But sometimes I think they don't realize how much we thirst for their voice, even if, we understand we have our own bishops. You're the Pope of the whole world. But, come on. It's an encouragement for us. And I know that sometimes they may not just realize how thirsty we are for their leadership. And yes, and Glenna, we're reaching out to Rush as well. I've been on his program. Christine is saying she first heard me on Larry O'Connor. That's right. He has had me on. And Rush has had me, but it's been a while though. And on Virgin Most Powerful too. Colin, yes, with our friend Terry Barber. Terry I've known, as he says on the program, whenever he has me on, I've known him since I was a seminarian. And Jesse Romero, great guy, I did the foreword for his book, A Catholic Vote for Trump, as many of you no doubt have seen. Let's see what some of these other questions are. Christy. Christy says, Father, please give me a good response to those who tell me that it's wrong to vote on one issue, meaning life. Well, one of my responses is, why is that wrong? It's the most fundamental issue. Without life, you don't have any other issue. And you know, why would it be, in a more fundamental sense, you can approach this in two ways. The freedom of the voter and the fundamental nature of the issue. The fundamental nature of the issue is easy to understand. We're talking about the first purpose of government. We're talking about the issue, the right, life itself, without which you don't have any other issues. So in that sense, when we're voting on life, when we're saying the candidate has to agree with my position on abortion, well then we're voting for what is the foundation of all the other issues. If you don't have life, you don't have any other right. So that's one way of approaching it. Point out that that is the first purpose of government, and point out also that that, more than anything else, speaks to the moral character of the person you're electing. I put it this way: if a politician can't respect the life of a little baby, how's he supposed to respect yours? It cuts, in other words, their position on life isn't, the one issue isn't just one issue. It cuts through every issue. If you can't respect a little baby, you can't respect anybody else. And if you can't protect life, you can't protect education. What kind of education plan are you going to have if the kids are dead? Now, you can also approach this question from the freedom of the voter. Why can't I vote on one issue? Isn't that part of the freedom of voting? Who are you to tell me how I have to vote? So I have the freedom to, in fact, isn't this the way it happens? You ask any politician, how did you get into politics? Well, anybody whom I've ever heard tell that story also tells the story, always tells the story from the point of view of one or another issue. Oh, I was on a civil rights march, and that's how I got involved. Well, what made Martin Luther King Jr. politically active? I mean, being motivated by one issue is a normal part of the story of people getting involved in politics, and of voters getting motivated to vote. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So you can argue that way from the freedom of the voter. And by the way, 1 in 4 voters do exactly that when it comes on to life. Look up the recent, and we have these polls, by the way, on our Priest for Life website, priestforlife.org/statistics. There was just a Gallup poll that showed that 1 out of 4 voters said the candidate I vote for must be in agreement with me on the issue of abortion. So it is a determinative issue in our politics, and that's simply the way that it is. Letitia is saying something very good here. For those who are pro-life, abortion issue should always be a litmus test. If it's true that abortion is the intentional execution of helpless children, then it's also true that those who support its legality are not morally qualified to hold any political office. They can't be trusted. Exactly. And that's another dimension of this argument too, Christy. It's another part of this, a good way to answer this question, which is this. It's a disqualifying issue. Nobody's saying it's the only issue that exists. I've never heard anybody about any issue say it's the only issue that exists. So again, that's a red herring. Just push that argument aside. Tell them it's ridiculous. But here's the example I use, and I've used this in one of my brochures. Think of it this way, and see if this response works with the people you're talking to. Say, look, just suppose, as silly as it sounds, that a candidate came along and said, I support terrorism. I think the terrorists have a right to do what they did. I support terrorism. Are you going to say, or is any voter going to say, or is your friend going to say that you're trying to argue this point with, oh, well, sir, I disagree with you on terrorism, but what's your health care plan? I think you're wrong about the terrorists, but tell me about your education plan. I'm eager to hear it. No, you would say, and I think anybody would say, unless they were terrorists themselves, that support for terrorism disqualifies you from public office. It's like when you come to that point, you don't even have to hear their answers to any other questions. You don't even need to hear their position on any other issues because they've made it so that it's irrelevant. They've taken a position so completely contrary to the public good and to the meaning of public service that they've disqualified themselves from consideration. Leslie, thanks for pointing out President Trump has no issue with immigrants. Positively, absolutely correct. He knows, like the rest of us know, this country was built on immigrants, built by immigrants. He doesn't have anything against immigration. This is where this president is subject to so much rash judgment. And especially when it comes from people who are claiming to have some concern about the faith. Be careful of this rash judgment issue. He says come in legally. You know who else says that? The Catechism, the Catholic Catechism. Immigrants need to obey the laws of the country that they seek to enter. Bishops, Anna May is saying, too quiet on abortion. At least they said in their November meeting when they have their General Assembly, twice a year they do it in November and in June. At least they said, hey, it is the preeminent issue. The preeminent issue. And that's good. At least they're saying that. But a lot of times, they're too focused on some of these other issues. Some of them are way off the track. Talking about, as if climate change were the fundamental. Some of them come right out and say, oh, the most fundamental issue is climate change. It's like, give me a break. Come on, guys, you're smarter than that. Patricia's correct. Mexico really celebrated recently a pro-life win. They tried to expand. Abortion is legal only in the Mexico City area, and they tried to expand that, did not do so. We have our international outreach with Priests for Life works to help our friends south of the border, and a lot of great pro-life leaders down there that we've been able to interact with. Janet Morana, our executive director, co-founder of Silent No More, was down there in Mexico together with our Silent No More team, and really helped to strengthen over the years, has helped to strengthen the pro-life community there. See the negative impact of abortion on women, and this is something we have to challenge the voters with as well. Challenge Biden and the Democrats. Why you're hurting women? Abortion hurts women. It's not some kind of woman's right. Dale, you're correct. Bishops tend to lean left. And those that don't, they tend to be too quiet about it. Kathy, are there lists of true Catholic pro-life candidates? Many times we have no idea what a candidate stands for. Sometimes it's hard to find info. We're going to have on these programs we're going to delve into this very, very frequently and repeatedly. Let me give you two websites, to help you find where the candidates stand. One of them is ours. One of them is from another group that we collaborate with. The letter I, iVoterGuide.com. This is a tremendous resource that we help, many other groups help put together. iVoterGuide.com will give you the ability to find out a lot of information about candidates on not only the federal level, on the state level as well. And it'll show you their positions. It'll show you their votes. It'll show you who they endorsed, who endorsed them, who they donated to, who donated to them. It'll show you a lot. iVoterGuide.com. And then we've got on our site votinginfo.org. Votinginfo.org. And that gives some general guidance, and then it gives some specific links, including to ivoterguide.com, and then votinginfo.org. And then it will give you links to some other resources too that you can use. One of the ways that you can tell where a candidate is if he or she has already held public office, for example, in Congress. Then, let me take Bradley's question there too. If they've already been in Congress, they have a voting record and it's public. How did they vote on pro-abortion bills? Well, votinginfo.org will show you the link, lead you to the link, where you can actually see how they voted on on abortion-related bills, if they voted pro-abortion or voted pro-life. And you know what it'll also show you? It'll show you the rating. Groups that are experts in particular areas will often give candidates a rating, a scorecard on how they did on the issue. So, for example, National Right to Life on the pro-life side and Planned Parenthood on the pro-abortion side both give ratings to candidates. So if those candidates have already been members of Congress, so all the members of Congress that are running for re-election, whoever's running for House of Representatives in your district, they have a rating from National Right to Life. And if they have a National Right to Life 100% rating, that means that, hey, they always voted pro-life. If they have a rating from Planned Parenthood of 100%, they've always voted pro-abortion. And then you'll see all the variations in between. So I hope that's helpful, friends. As far as them being Catholic, ivoterguide.com will show you if the candidate answered the question, sometimes they don't like to answer it, whether what religion they espouse. So they will show you. And we'll be publishing a lot of lists too, like who are all the Catholic members of Congress. We can put out that information. And we will be. We're constantly going to be updating our information at our election website, which is prolifevote.com. Bradley's question, there never seems to be any priests, only Protestant pastors, present at most religious gatherings at the White House. Why? That's a good question. There have been some, but like you say, not usually. And the evangelical support for the president has been much more explicit than the Catholic support. Now, the Trump campaign and the White House in its day-to-day business, those are two distinct entities. You've got the White House doing the business of governing, and then you've got the campaign doing the business of reelecting him. There's interaction with Catholics. I'm involved in a lot of it. There's presence of Catholics, but the outreach to the Catholics is something that has, doesn't get from the Catholic hierarchy and clergy as enthusiastic a response as it gets from the evangelical pastors. And that's because, there has been, a lot of long-standing loyalty among the Catholic ranks to the Democrat Party. That's changing. That's the good news. And we see that in these recent presidential elections. We saw it in the George W. Bush years and his two elections, where the Catholic vote started swinging more Republican, primarily because of this abortion issue. So it's gradually changing. One of the things I'm doing in regard to, and you don't see this so much at the gatherings at the White House, although I've been there, I've been invited and I've been present, and sometimes you'll have others who are there, but not as much as the evangelical pastors. But one of the things I have been asked to do, you might have seen this on some of the online events. If you go to donaldjtrump.com/event, donaldjtrump.com is the election website for the re-election of the president. donaldjtrump.com. Go there regularly, check it out. All of you that are supporting the president, make that a regular activity too. Go to that website. And if you go to donaldjtrump.com/events, you'll see when the in-person rallies were taking place. Oh, they were so great. that's where you would see the schedule of the upcoming rallies. But now what you see there is every single day there are online events. And and some of those online events, they invite me to come on. They invite me to come on to pray, to lead the rosary, to talk about, the Catholic view on various issues, to talk about pro-life. And so I've been very privileged to be part of those events, and I will be more in the future. And so at least I'm able to give some kind of priestly presence in the midst of that. Christy has said, I've had folks argue and say that President Trump doesn't attend any church. He goes to church. He also, during the midst of the pandemic, as people were doing everything from home, at the height of that, he was talking about publicly how he was participating online, as most Americans were doing, with church services every single Sunday. So yeah, he does. So he does practice his faith. He is a believing Christian. And you can tell people this too. I know the pastors, several of them, that ministered to the president personally. And they have told me, and they've said it publicly, I'm not sharing any secrets here, that this man is so open to and eager to growing in his Christian faith, and that they have hardly ever seen someone more eager, more cooperative with the Spirit of God in deepening his faith. He's truly a Christian believer. And it's sincere, it's real, and I know that in not only my own interactions, but with the interactions of these pastors that have been even closer to him and ministering to him in these spiritual ways. They have said, wow, this man is he's the real deal. By their fruits you will know them. He wouldn't be able to deal with the attacks that he undergoes. He wouldn't be able to have the successes that he has had in defending our country and doing all the things that he's doing if he weren't working in cooperation with God's grace. John is asking if I'll be given a chance to talk to Joe Biden. What question would I ask him? Well, there would be. One of the first questions would be, explain to me why it is that you can't protect even a single one of these babies. And challenge him to why don't you protect? See, it's not a matter. A lot of people say, well, what do you believe? Or he says, I believe the teaching of my church. I'm not interested in that. I don't care what you believe. What are you going to do to protect these babies? Why can't you protect these babies? And the other question that goes closely along with that my friends, I encourage you to ask the Democrat candidates is this. Why isn't there room in the party anymore for pro-life Democrats? There are so many good pro-life Democrats, citizens, our fellow citizens, in the pro-life movement. And yet they feel abandoned by their party. My friend and colleague, Kristen Day, you might remember, she heads up Democrats for Life, has for years. I've helped her out in a lot of ways. And she was able to go to a town hall meeting where when Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, was still in the race, and she asked him the question that was asked long ago in the early 90s by then pro-life Governor Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. Why does the party not have room for pro-life Democrats? And that would be a good question for Biden as well, and that's something that I would ask him. The media keeps saying that Biden is leading. Listen, doesn't mean anything. Honestly, it does not mean anything. The campaigns at this point are not paying attention to these horse race polls. There are also polls talking about how Trump is gaining on Biden. But listen, at this point, first of all, it's too early. Even though, like I said the other day, in a sense, 3 months is a short time when you think about all the things we have to do to mobilize the voters. In a political sense, though, it's a very long time. So many things still have to happen. Biden hasn't announced his VP yet. That's supposed to happen this week. The conventions haven't happened yet. That always affects the polling. The debates hasn't happened. It's just something that there's just too much. And by the way, and not all these polls are able really to say what's going to happen in the election. Because, first of all, if it's a national poll, it doesn't mean anything in terms of the outcome, because that's not how the presidential race is decided, first of all. It's not decided by a national vote count. It's decided through the Electoral College. So it's the state polls that matter more. Secondly, you have to ask, is it a poll just of adults? Which, again, doesn't say much. And like Juliana is saying, very good. Biden is not leading. Neither was Hillary, right? The day before 2016 election, the media was saying, oh, she got a 96% chance of winning, And you know what one of the reasons for that is what I'm saying now, is that whom is being asked the question. So you see these polls, usually we don't see below the surface in these polls. Usually we don't see below the surface. What was the methodology used? What were the models used? See, polls have to use models. They have to, first of all, the sampling of the poll has to accurately represent the sampling of the public. And so it's a difference between if you ask just adults, or if you ask registered voters, or if you ask likely voters. Those are 3 different categories of people, likely voters. Or if you ask people who actually voted last time. So you have to look at a poll and say, well, who are they asking? And the other thing you have to look at is, does their modeling reflect what's going to happen on Election Day? See, that's one of the reasons the polls were so wrong in 2016, was that people came out of the woodwork. People who had never voted, people who hadn't voted in a decade or more, came out to vote for Donald Trump because he energized and motivated them. And the pollsters didn't know that they were there. They didn't take account of these people when they project. Every poll is a projection. They may interview 1,000 people or 1,500 people. That's a pretty good sampling for a poll. But 1,500 people don't decide the election. So if a whole bunch of people come out to vote that never voted before, you didn't see them coming, the poll is worthless. So listen, friends. Biden, whatever polls are saying, put no stock in it. Put no stock in it. Do what you know you are able to do, and that is reach the voters within your circle of influence with the kind of things that I'm sharing with you on this program, with the kind of things that you know and that you can say to them. And as Dale is saying, there's all kinds of propaganda polls as well, have no doubt. Lies are going on, rigging is going on, Democrats are counting the cemetery vote, Christine, like you're saying, including dead cats, apparently. A vote ballot was sent to a dead cat recently, and that got some attention. And Agent 99 is completely correct. Polls do not win elections. Votes do. Only one thing is counted on election night, and that is the votes actually cast. And of course, and what Christy is saying is true too. I've never been called by a pollster, neither have I. Who are these people calling? So be encouraged, friends. A lot more to happen. And listen, one thing that is very, very clear as political experts are looking at the landscape, and we saw this in 2016, despite how the polls were favoring Hillary, you know what everybody saw that was so telling and that ultimately pointed to the truth? Why was President Trump getting these massive crowds at his rallies and Clinton was not? The enthusiasm gap. And that has showed up again this time. The people who say that they're voting for the president are much more saying, much more of them are saying they're enthusiastically in supporting him than are. It's one thing to support somebody. Oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden. Another, how enthusiastic are you? Well, I'm going to vote for him. But then you look at the people who are going to say I'm going to vote for the president. It's like, yeah, they are fired up. Which side wins? The ones that are fired up are also going to be getting other voters and pounding the pavement and making the phone calls. That's why I want to urge you to volunteer. Someone was asking, share those websites again. So our main election website, Pro-Life Vote. Let's put it on. You see iVoter Guide, that's for the candidates' positions. Votinginfo.org, again, candidates' positions, some general guidance on there and specific links, votinginfo.org. And our overall voter website, prolifevote.com. Yes, and what you're saying, bad blood there. Even the proudest Trump voter will not even talk to these poll calls. And this is a phenomenon that we see too, is that we see a lot of people who are clearly, strongly supporting the president. And it's like, listen, when they're in the confidentiality of that voting booth, they will vote for him. That doesn't mean they want to tell anybody else about it, especially in a climate that we have right now, sad to say, where we're the ones under attack. I mean, the only reason the other side is attacking him is that they're really attacking us. They're attacking us. And, Linda, that's so great to hear. A boat parade today in New York, in Oneida Lake, New York, for President Trump. We had one over here last month, a few thousand boats here in Florida, over by Merritt Island. But that's great. In New York, boats sailing there for the president. So many great things happening. So thank you, friends. It's getting late. Boy, the time goes by so fast when I'm chatting with you in these programs. We'll be back again tomorrow night, back tomorrow morning for Mass, of course. But let me give you a blessing and wish you a good night, and thank you again for all your comments and questions. May the Lord send you His Holy Spirit, strengthen you, protect you, answer all your prayers, make you strong defenders of the unborn. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now, one of you was asking, does President Trump watch your program? Actually, I don't know if he ever has, but one thing I can assure you, he would be encouraged, not just by what I say, but by what you have said. So thank you for saying it. See you tomorrow. Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.